April 30, 1945, 3:30 p.m. Deep beneath the ruins of Berlin, in Hitler's underground bunker, a small group of Nazi leaders gathers in the corridor outside the Führer's private quarters. Among them stands SS Brigadeführer Wilhelm Mohnke, commander of the Führerbunker, Hitler's personal guard battalion. He's 43 years old, a combat veteran since 1939, and a true believer in National Socialism. Minutes earlier, Hitler and Eva Braun entered their private suite. Everyone knows what's about to happen. The sound of a gunshot echoes through the bunker's concrete walls. Mohnke and the others wait in tense silence. After several minutes, Hitler's valet, Heinz Ling, opens the door. The Führer is dead. Eva Braun is dead. The Third Reich is over. Mohnke helps carry Hitler's body up the stairs to the garden above. They pour gasoline over the bodies and set them ablaze. Soviet artillery shells are landing nearby. The acrid smoke mixes with the smell of burning flesh. This is the end. But for Wilhelm Mohnke, it's just the beginning of a remarkable story. A story of war crimes, Soviet captivity, release, and a quiet retirement in West Germany where he lived freely until his death in 2001 at age 90. He was never prosecuted for any of his alleged crimes. He never stood trial. He simply walked away. This is how he did it. To understand how Mohnke escaped justice, you need to understand what he allegedly did during the war. May 28, 1940. The Battle of France. Mohnke commands the 2nd Battalion, 1st SS Division Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler. His unit is advancing rapidly, pushing British and French forces back toward Dunkirk. Near the village of Wormhout, his battalion captures approximately 90 British and French prisoners. What happens next is disputed, but multiple survivors testified consistently. SS soldiers under Mohnke's command herd the prisoners into a barn. They're told to surrender their weapons and wait. Instead, SS troops throw grenades into the barn. When prisoners try to escape the explosions, they're machine-gunned down. Survivors describe SS soldiers laughing while executing wounded men. Approximately 80 prisoners are murdered. 15 survive by hiding under bodies or playing dead. The Wormhout massacre becomes one of many atrocities committed by the Leibstandarte during the campaign. British investigators later compile evidence suggesting Mohnke either ordered the massacre or at minimum knew about it and did nothing to stop it. Mohnke always denied involvement, claiming he wasn't present. But survivors identified his unit specifically. The evidence was strong enough that British authorities wanted him for war crimes. They never got him. Mohnke's alleged war crimes didn't stop at Wormhout. June 1941. Operation Barbarossa. Mohnke commands SS troops during the invasion of the Soviet Union. His unit participates in the rapid advance toward Moscow, fighting with characteristic SS brutality. Multiple Soviet investigations after the war accused Mohnke's units of execution of Soviet prisoners of war, participation in anti-partisan operations that killed civilians, and destruction of villages with populations trapped inside. The evidence was less clear than Wormhout. The chaos of the Eastern Front made documentation difficult. But the pattern was consistent. Wherever Mohnke commanded, atrocities followed. By 1943, Mohnke is wounded and sent back to Germany to recover. When he returns to duty in 1944, he's promoted and given command of the Führerbunker, Hitler's personal protection unit. This places him in Hitler's inner circle during the final year of the war. It's a remarkable promotion for a man with his brutal reputation. Or perhaps it's precisely because of that reputation that Hitler trusted him. The Führer wanted fanatics who would fight to the death around him. Mohnke fit that description perfectly. By April 1945, Mohnke is one of the last SS generals defending Berlin. And he's about to witness history's final act in the Führerbunker. April 1945. Soviet armies surround Berlin. The city is being reduced to rubble street by street. Hitler, refusing to evacuate, retreats to his underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. Mohnke commands the defense of the government quarter, including the bunker itself. He's in and out of the bunker daily, reporting on defensive positions, discussing breakout plans, witnessing Hitler's deterioration. In those final days, Mohnke sees Hitler at his worst, ranting about betrayal, issuing impossible orders, shaking with Parkinson's disease, completely detached from reality. But Mohnke remains loyal. On April 29, Hitler marries Eva Braun in a bizarre midnight ceremony. Mohnke is among the witnesses. Hitler dictates his will, blaming Jews for the war and ordering the German people to continue fighting. The next day, April 30th, Hitler learns that Mussolini has been killed by Italian partisans and his body displayed hanging upside down in Milan. This seems to push Hitler to his final decision. He summons Mohnke and other senior officers. He tells them he will commit suicide and orders his body to be burned to prevent it from being captured by the Soviets. Mohnke acknowledges the order. That afternoon, Hitler and Eva Braun kill themselves. Mohnke helps carry out the burning. He's one of the last people to see Hitler alive and one of the first to see him dead. This makes him an incredibly valuable witness, which should have made him a prime target for Allied investigators. So why wasn't he? May 1, 1945. Hitler is dead, but Berlin still hasn't surrendered. Mohnke and other bunker survivors face a choice: surrender to the Soviets or try to escape. Surrender seems like certain death, especially for SS officers who committed war crimes. They decide to attempt a breakout. Mohnke organizes groups of soldiers and civilians from the bunker to make a run for it. The plan is to move north through the U-Bahn tunnels, cross Soviet lines, and reach areas controlled by Western allies. It's desperate and has almost no chance of success, but it's better than waiting for the Soviets. The breakout begins after midnight. Hundreds of people, soldiers, secretaries, officers, Hitler Youth, crowd into the tunnels. Mohnke leads one group. The tunnels are flooded, dark, and chaotic. Soviet troops are hunting for German survivors. The groups scatter. Some are killed. Some are captured. Some successfully hide in bombed-out buildings. Mohnke's group makes it several kilometers before being surrounded by Soviet troops on May 2. They surrender. For Mohnke, Soviet captivity begins. He expects to be executed or at minimum sent to Siberia forever. Neither happens. Why? Because Mohnke has something the Soviets desperately want: first-hand knowledge of Hitler's death. The Soviets are obsessed with confirming Hitler's death. Stalin refuses to believe Hitler is actually dead without absolute proof. Soviet intelligence, SMRSH, interrogates everyone captured from the bunker, trying to piece together exactly what happened. Mohnke is a prize catch. He was there. He saw Hitler's body. He helped burn it. He can describe everything in detail. For weeks, Soviet interrogators question Mohnke relentlessly. He tells them everything: Hitler's suicide, Eva Braun's death, the burning of the bodies, the bunker's final hours. His testimony corroborates other witnesses. It helps the Soviets establish the timeline and method of Hitler's death. This testimony is valuable, but it's also Mohnke's leverage. As long as the Soviets need information from him, they can't simply execute him. He becomes a witness rather than just a war criminal. British and American intelligence want to question Mohnke too, especially about Wormhout. But the Soviets refuse to hand him over. He's Soviet property now. This creates a bizarre situation: the Western Allies know Mohnke committed war crimes in France, but can't access him for prosecution. The Soviets know he's a war criminal, but value him as a witness about Hitler. So Mohnke sits in Soviet captivity, useful but not prosecuted. For now. 1945 to 1955. Mohnke spends a decade in Soviet prison camps. But his captivity is unusual compared to most German POWs. Because of his value as a Hitler witness, he receives better treatment than ordinary prisoners. He's not sent to the worst labor camps. He's not starved or worked to death. He's kept alive and relatively healthy in case the Soviets need more testimony. During these 10 years, Mohnke is interrogated repeatedly about Hitler, the bunker, Nazi leaders, SS operations. He cooperates fully, providing detailed accounts. He also writes extensive memoirs of the bunker period, documents the Soviets keep. Meanwhile, in the West, British investigators continue building their case about Wormhout. They interview survivors, collect evidence, prepare for eventual prosecution. They request Mohnke's extradition repeatedly. The Soviets refuse every time. By 1955, the political situation has changed. Stalin is dead. The Cold War is established. West Germany is now a NATO ally. The Soviets decide to release German POWs as a goodwill gesture toward West Germany. Mohnke is among those released. British authorities are furious, they still want him for Wormhout. But by the time he arrives in West Germany, a strange legal situation has developed that will protect him. When Mohnke returns to West Germany in 1955, he walks into a unique legal situation that will save him from prosecution. West German law in the 1950s has several peculiarities regarding war crimes. First, the statute of limitations for murder has a time limit. By 1955, some of Mohnke's alleged crimes from 1940 are approaching that limit. Second, West Germany is reluctant to prosecute former Wehrmacht and SS officers too aggressively. The country is rebuilding, and many former soldiers hold positions in the new government, military, and society. Aggressive war crimes prosecutions would be politically difficult. Third, international extradition for war crimes committed before 1945 is legally complicated. The post-war treaties have loopholes. Fourth, and most importantly, the Soviets never formally charged Mohnke with war crimes. They held him as a POW and witness, but never prosecuted him. This creates a legal gray area. British authorities want to extradite Mohnke for Wormhout. They file formal requests with West German authorities. But Mohnke's lawyers argue, he was already held by the Soviets for 10 years, hasn't he suffered enough? The evidence from Wormhout is old and disputed. The British can't prove he personally ordered the massacre. Double jeopardy, he was already investigated by the Soviets. West German courts, already reluctant to prosecute, accept these arguments. Extradition is denied. Mohnke is free. Free to live in West Germany. Free to write his memoirs. Free to give interviews. Free to die of old age, never facing trial. British survivors of Wormhout are outraged. Soviet prosecutors are confused, they thought the West would handle him. But the loophole works. Mohnke walks away. 1955 to 2001. Wilhelm Mohnke lives quietly in West Germany for 46 years after his release. He settles in Damp, a small town in Schleswig-Holstein in northern Germany. He uses his real name. He doesn't hide. He lives a normal life, goes to restaurants, shops, walks around town. Neighbors know who he is. Some are uncomfortable with a former SS general living among them. Others don't care or prefer to forget the past. Germany in the 1950s and 60s is full of former Nazis trying to rebuild normal lives. Mohnke is just one among thousands. He gives occasional interviews to historians researching Hitler's final days. He writes memoirs about the bunker period. He cooperates with documentaries. He becomes a sought-after source for bunker information, the last living witness to many events. But he always refuses to discuss Wormhout. When asked about war crimes, he says, "I was a soldier following orders. What happened at Wormhout was investigated by the Soviets and the matter is closed." It's not true, the Soviets never investigated Wormhout. But it's his story and he sticks to it. British veterans groups periodically call for his prosecution. They write letters, give interviews, demand justice. Nothing happens. West German authorities say the case is too old, the evidence too weak, the legal situation too complicated. The truth is simpler, nobody wants to prosecute. It's easier to let old men die quietly than to reopen painful wartime wounds. Through the 1970s and 80s, Mohnke becomes increasingly valuable to historians as other bunker witnesses die off. He's one of the last people alive who saw Hitler's final days firsthand. Documentaries seek him out. Authors interview him. Historians record his testimony. Mohnke is careful in these interviews. He portrays himself as a professional soldier who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He emphasizes his role as witness to history rather than perpetrator of crimes. He describes Hitler as a tragic figure who lost touch with reality. He provides vivid details about the bunker, details that can't be obtained anywhere else. He becomes, in effect, a celebrity witness. The last living link to Hitler. And he uses this status to rehabilitate his image. He's not a war criminal. He's a historical source. This revisionism is subtle but effective. Young Germans who interview him see an old man with interesting stories, not an SS general with blood on his hands. International media seeking bunker information don't ask about Wormhout, they want to hear about Hitler. Mohnke controls the narrative brilliantly. He gives them what they want, bunker stories, while avoiding what they should ask about, war crimes. British veterans who survived Wormhout watch these interviews with fury. The man who ordered their comrade's murder is on television telling amusing anecdotes about Hitler's dog. But there's nothing they can do. The legal window has closed. Mohnke has won. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, survivors of the Wormhout massacre and their families wage a persistent campaign to bring Mohnke to justice. They're aging now, men in their 70s and 80s. Time is running out. They compile evidence, give interviews, write to German prosecutors, petition British authorities. Their case is compelling. Multiple survivors identified Mohnke's battalion specifically. The massacre was witnessed and documented. Mohnke commanded the unit, even if he didn't personally pull triggers, command responsibility applies. War crimes have no statute of limitations under international law. But every legal attempt fails. German prosecutors say the evidence doesn't definitively prove Mohnke personally ordered the killings. British authorities can't extradite him without German cooperation. International courts say they lack jurisdiction over crimes committed before their establishment. The survivors are trapped in a Kafkaesque legal maze. Everyone agrees Mohnke's unit committed the massacre. Everyone agrees Mohnke commanded that unit. But nobody can prosecute him. In 1988, some survivors and families sue Mohnke in German civil court, seeking acknowledgement of his responsibility. The case drags on for years. Mohnke's lawyers argue that even if the massacre happened, there's no proof Mohnke ordered it or even knew about it. The court eventually dismisses the case. Too much time has passed, evidence is insufficient for legal certainty. The survivors are devastated. Justice will never come. In the 1990s, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, famous for hunting Nazi war criminals, investigates Mohnke. They compile extensive documentation, evidence of the Wormhout massacre, Soviet investigations into Eastern Front atrocities, testimony from multiple witnesses across different theaters, and command responsibility arguments. They present this to German prosecutors with a simple question: how is this man living freely? The German response is bureaucratic and legalistic. Mohnke was investigated after the war and not charged. The statute of limitations has expired for many alleged crimes. Evidence standards for prosecution are high. Resources for prosecuting elderly war criminals are limited. The center pushes back: war crimes have no statute of limitations. Evidence is strong. Justice demands prosecution. But nothing happens. By the late 1990s, Mohnke is in his 90s. Even if prosecution began, he'd likely die before trial concluded. German authorities essentially wait him out. The Wiesenthal Center's investigation does accomplish one thing: it puts Mohnke's story in the public record. News articles appear. Documentaries mention his alleged crimes alongside his bunker testimony. His reputation becomes more complicated. But he's never prosecuted. Never even formally charged. He dies free. In 1999, British journalist and historian Max Hastings attempts to interview Mohnke specifically about Wormhout. By now Mohnke is 98 years old and in poor health. Hastings requests the interview through intermediaries, making clear he wants to discuss war crimes, not just the bunker. Mohnke's family refuses on his behalf. A written response comes back, likely drafted by lawyers. Mohnke is elderly and unwell. He has nothing to add to his previous statements. The allegations regarding Wormhout were investigated by Soviet authorities and found insufficient for prosecution. He respectfully declines this interview. Hastings publishes the refusal along with his research on Wormhout. He writes, "Here is a man who witnessed one of history's most significant moments, Hitler's death. That makes him valuable to historians. But that same man likely ordered or allowed the massacre of 80 prisoners in 1940. That should make him a war criminal. The fact that he can refuse interviews and die peacefully is an indictment of post-war justice." Other survivors and families read Hastings's piece with bitter recognition. They've been saying this for 50 years. But time has run out. Mohnke will never answer questions under oath. He will never face his accusers. He will never be judged. In 2 more years, he'll be dead. August 6, 2001. Wilhelm Mohnke dies in Damp, Germany, at age 90. He's surrounded by family. He dies peacefully in his sleep. No trial. No prison. No punishment for any alleged crimes. His obituaries are telling in their contradictions. German newspapers emphasize his role as Hitler witness, mentioning war crime allegations only briefly. British newspapers lead with Wormhout, calling him the SS general who escaped justice. The Simon Wiesenthal Center issues a statement: "Another Nazi war criminal has died unpunished." This represents a failure of post-war justice systems. Survivors of Wormhout who are still alive feel bitter vindication. They always knew he'd die free. But knowing it and seeing it are different. One survivor tells a reporter, "He killed my friends. 80 men. And he lived to 90, dying in his bed. Where is the justice in that? There is none." Mohnke is buried quietly in a cemetery in Schleswig-Holstein. No military honors. No large funeral. His family wants to avoid protests. Some British veterans groups consider protesting anyway but decide against it. He's dead. Protesting his funeral won't bring justice. The case is closed. Not through legal proceedings. Not through accountability. But through time and death. Mohnke won by outliving his accusers and the political will to prosecute him. Why did Wilhelm Mohnke escape justice when other Nazi war criminals didn't? The answer is a perfect storm of factors. Soviet captivity, being held by Soviets prevented Western prosecution during the crucial immediate post-war years when political will was strongest. Witness value, his knowledge of Hitler's death made him too valuable to simply execute. Legal loopholes, West Germany's reluctant prosecution policies and statute of limitations issues created escape routes. Cold War politics, by the 1950s, prosecuting former Wehrmacht/SS was politically complicated. West Germany was now an ally. Time, the longer he lived, the harder prosecution became. Witnesses died. Evidence degraded. Political will faded. No single, smoking gun, while evidence strongly suggested his involvement in war crimes, there was no document with his signature ordering atrocities. This gave lawyers plausible deniability. Smart legal strategy, Mohnke cooperated on bunker questions while refusing to discuss war crimes. He gave historians what they wanted while avoiding incrimination. The lesson of Mohnke's case is disturbing: if you commit war crimes, survive long enough, and have valuable information to trade, you can escape justice. The system failed. British survivors spent 50 years seeking justice and got none. Soviet captivity, German reluctance, legal technicalities, and time combined to protect Mohnke. He walked away. Lived freely. Died peacefully. This isn't justice. It's a reminder that justice isn't automatic. It requires political will, legal resources, international cooperation, and timing. When any of those fail, perpetrators can escape. Wilhelm Mohnke is proof of that. He watched Hitler die. Then he walked away. And nobody could touch him.